Do you know you are being manipulated without even knowing it? Do you know by what you are being manipulated? Let's find out how you are being manipulated and the methods needed to reclaim your original mind. There is a war for our mind, and most people don't even know the war that is being waged. Now, the war that's being waged on us now is through what is called the attention economy. Now, what is the attention economy? The attention economy is basically what social media feeds on, right? And what the mass media actually feed on as well. They all want to attract as many eyeballs as possible to them because that ensures their longevity and existence financially, right? And so a lot of us become victims of the attention economy. And sometimes we don't even know that we are within the attention economy as a creator or a consumer. Some people don't even know that, right? And so even with this channel, right, it is part of the attention economy, but it is an outlier in the sense that the knowledge that we speak about here is the higher knowledge, right? And other channels are the same. But unfortunately, 90% of content on YouTube and probably social media in general is completely unnecessary, but in saying that, that is what most people watch. And so most people are not interested in higher knowledge anymore and learning particular skills and so forth and so on. People just want entertainment. And so as a result, there is a lot of meaningless content on social media. And a lot of people will ask me, why don't YouTube push my videos? Because people aren't interested in higher knowledge. People are interested in certain slapstick humor and certain meaningless videos. And so the algorithm pushes that because that ensures the existence of YouTube or whatever other social media platform that is. This is what the attention economy is, right? And so the attention economy wants your attention. It wants to distract you for as long as possible because that keeps them financially sound and keeps you engaged. But what does that do for your health and sanity? That's the question we need to ask. And so the attention economy is the reason why there is a lot of trouble in the world, right? Because the attention economy, the system, will push controversial topics, violence, divisive ideologies, and so forth and so on, because that's what triggers people and gets people to get in the door of that video and watch the video or whatever it may be. And that makes the overarching business and company money while it causes social instability as a result, right? And so then what the attention economy does is it destroys a society because that's what ensures their existence. It's just a byproduct of it. But we need to be cognizant of it. We need to realize that there is a war for your mind and sanity. Now, how this begins is the attention economy trains you to be distracted. And as a result from that distraction, usually through touchy subjects or usually through entertainment or usually through trying to reinforce certain behavioral patterns that you may have, you become overly sensitive and triggered. And as a result, we live in an overly sensitive and triggered world, which contributes to more suicide, more mental health problems, and so forth and so on. And then people want to criticize what the world was 30 years ago when we didn't have a lot of suicide, didn't have a lot of mental health problems, and so forth and so on. But people who champion all of these ridiculous divisive ideologies in the modern day will try to justify their cause, even though we have world record rates of suicide and mental health problems and health issues in general. So you need to be aware of how narratives promoted by social media and mainstream media train you to be somebody you're not, making you believe in all sorts of insanity, which we find in the modern world. You wouldn't think of half of the things that you'd think of if it wasn't for social media and mainstream media. Now, to reinforce that point, just think back to 2010, for example, when social media was not a part of smartphones at the time. Social media had been around for a little bit of time before that, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is today. It wasn't to the point of addiction as it is today, right? So just think back to 2010 and think about all of the insane things that people think about today. Think of all the crazy ideas and ideologies that are out there that come from social media companies that have influenced and manipulated people to think that way, and take that information and take it back to 2010 and see how it holds up. And it doesn't hold up. So what is wrong here? Were we idiots in 2010 and now in 2023 we are enlightened through the smartphone, through the social media companies who promote divisive ideologies? Are we now enlightened with all of these high rates of suicide? No, of course not, because that's not progress, right? And we've all been fooled that it is progress, and it is not. Just pressure test anything from the modern day, all of these crazy ideas that society and culture are promoting, and pressure test it against past decades. Does not hold up. It will never hold up, and it will never be sane. So essentially what the attention economy does is it trains you to think dualistically and be partial all the time. So you're always thinking in a partial manner. You're always dissecting the world up in this and that according to your conditioning, right? And so the attention economy fuels that conditioning, fuels that partial behavior of dissecting the world up in this and that, which then can only cause trouble, not only in the world around you, but within yourself. It makes people agitated, people have stress, people are anxious just because they saw something on a phone. It's not reality here. This is not reality. Go out and have a walk around. Go for a walk with a dog, pat a dog, say hello to a cat, watch the birds in the sky. This is reality. This is not reality. And what they spin through it. They want you to think in a dualistic manner. They want to enhance dualistic thinking, when in reality, all is Brahman, all is one. And we all understand that we're on the spiritual path. We understand that all is the one non-dual, pure consciousness. But what does the attention economy do? They want to enhance the illusion of Maya, the illusion of measurement, the illusion of dualistic thinking, the illusion that you live in a dualistic world. And it's all rubbish. Your nature is impartial. That's the truth. Your perception is impartial. You've only been conditioned, and then you build this illusion of the ego, this identity that you believe you are, that associates with this or that, thinks that you are this gender, this race, this nationality, you're from this earth. Everything's got a label. Everything is nama rupa in Sanskrit, name and form. And within Hinduism and Buddhism, nama rupa is something that you need to get over. And so the question for all of us is, how do we become impartial again? How can we reclaim our impartiality, our sanity, and see the nature of Brahman alone? How can we do that? Well, I will share with you 6 practices that you need to make part of your life to overcome this war, to win the war actually, so that the attention economy doesn't have a bind over you, and so that they don't condition you to think in a dualistic manner and make you believe all sorts of rubbish. And after that, I will share with you 3 meditation practices, which will help solidify these 6 life practices that I'm about to share with you. Now, the first one is pretty obvious, and it's not anywhere the deepest one to think about, but we are working from the surface level back to the inner world. And that one is turn off your phone and read more. Now, I know that a lot of you can't live without your phone, but you don't have to have your phone on 24 hours a day. You don't have to be connected at the hip with your phone. And you don't have to read things on your phone. And you don't have to consume things on your phone every hour of the day. You need to get away from screens in general and get back to paperback reading about subjects that you enjoy, hopefully of the higher knowledge of the East, which will continually free you from the clutches of any society or culture that yearn to warp your nature. The second one is never listen to the media and think independently again. This is a big one because people will listen to social media or they'll listen to mainstream media, and then they'll build their worldview based on either. Now, I'm saying don't build your worldview based on either of them. Don't do it. Remember that you have the ability to think independently, and you already have critical thinking skills developed in your being. You don't need to develop critical thinking skills. It's already part of your being. But we base our critical thinking skills based on what we are indoctrinated with by the media and social media. So you need to refrain from either. Because think about it this way. How has either improved your quality of life? Can you live without either? And of course, we all can. It's not to say that either aren't necessary in some point in time, but we don't need to be, again, joined at the hip to what's going on in the world and what's going on with your friends on social media. Remember, it wasn't so long ago that things would happen on the other side of the planet and we didn't know they happened on our side of the planet, but we continue to live happily. This was not so long ago. This was before the advent of media, right? Before the advent of television. So you don't need to know everything. You don't need to keep up with the Joneses, right? You don't need to be up with whatever the trends are of the time. Now, this backs onto the third practice, which is related to the media and social media, and that's in saying no to social justice. That doesn't mean you're not altruistic. That doesn't mean that you don't have forgiveness and compassion, but you don't have a certain political leaning or vested interest in how you apply your compassion or forgiveness. And that's the big problem with social justice in the modern day, where most social justice movements are based on either political spectrum, particularly in America, and so their compassion and forgiveness is not universal. It's only for their own team, as if there's an opposition. And there's this illusion in America at the moment that one or the other of left or right is the evil one and the other one is not evil and so forth and so on, right? But both are mutual aspects of society. They are a sounding board for each other to learn from, and so that society can progress. That is what democracy is, but we are trying to destroy that. And so in destroying that, we become a Marxist society, right? And most people don't know that because there is this tendency these days, particularly with one political leaning, to demonize the other political leaning, and they will cancel that anyone who's part of that political leaning. And so then what they are essentially establishing is a Marxist society where there is no freedom of speech and everyone is overly sensitive and triggered, which is what I spoke about earlier. And so if you are interested in spirituality and the depth of spirituality, how could you be interested in social justice? Think about that. Just think about it. It doesn't mean that you're heartless. It just means that you know that if you have an agenda, that only throws fuel on the fire. And those who are overly pious, who are under this illusion that their way is the way, are the problem. So there is no room in spirituality for social justice. And unfortunately, particularly in America, Eastern spirituality has been culturally appropriated to include social justice into it. So we're not coming to it from a wu-wei perspective of non-interference and allowing people to live as they will and having mutual respect for each and every one of us. We have a certain political leaning that we're going to push on others because we've decided that is what is moral and pious. And this is absolutely disgraceful to the Eastern spiritual paths. And actually, a lot of teachers in the East are absolutely dumbfounded with how Westerners portray particularly Buddhism in America, where Buddhism has unfortunately become this social justice warrior movement, which has nothing to do with the original teachings of the Buddha. It has nothing to do with the impartial mind of the Buddha. So apparently, according to American Buddhism, we should be partial, we should have a political leaning, and we should push that agenda because we decide that that's what's right. This is not Buddhism. Altruism is not one-sided. The Buddhism has nothing to do with politics at all. And so when I see these American Buddhist teachers, particularly Zen teachers, succumb to whatever the divisive narrative is on social media and through the mainstream media networks, I'm completely dumbfounded because that is not what Buddhism is. And I get teachers in Asia all the time speaking to me saying, why are they doing that? Like, what's their vested interest? And it's just that they are indoctrinated by the mainstream media and social media companies that have a vested interest, and they've somehow entangled Buddhism with these social justice warrior movements and have identified a certain party as the enemy. So these people who culturally and traditionally appropriate the Eastern teachings to suit the social justice movement are completely unaware that in doing so, they are biased towards a certain gender or race or nation or whatever is the moral flavor of the time, but they are completely ignorant of that. They don't even know that they are biased. And so that all that this ever does is just fuel division. And so in fueling division, how could anyone know that oneness is the ultimate reality? How could anyone know the impartial mind? Hey, you need to go out and do this. You need to do this because that's what they say on the TV. They say that you should do that. Or they say that this type of people are bad guys. And so you should not like this type of people. This is what you should do. It's almost fantasy. It's almost like something that you would discover in kindergarten, this type of thinking, right? But unfortunately, as Terence McKenna said, we have allowed the least among us to take control. And it's only up to us to realize that and to be sincere on the spiritual path, to understand that the least among us are just that, the least among us. And so we need to come back into our spiritual nature, our spiritual path, come back into the impartial mind, which is the actual real medicine for all troubles in the world. Having a partial mind cannot solve anything. An impartial mind is what brings spiritual oxygen to the world. If you have a bias towards a certain race, or you think your race is the best, or you have a certain bias towards a certain country, you think your country is the best, religion, or so forth and so on, then you are part of the problem. And that cannot produce harmony in the world. How could that produce harmony? It never can. But we will use all sorts of excuses to say why we are doing this, right? But our true nature is impartial. So no matter what excuse you come up with, it does not matter because your true nature is impartial. If we understood all of our impartial minds, none of this would happen. The world would not have conflict and we would have mutual respect for each other. So most of the social justice movements or the moral flavors of the time only creates the problems that it fights. And in general, these are first world problems. You know, in the West, a lot of people are so absorbed in their life. They're so self-centered that they cannot see the world at large. So all of these so-called first world problems that we have are apparently happening all around the world. And they're not. If you want to be a real social justice warrior and you want to practice altruism in its proper context, what about the 30-odd thousand people that die of no food a day? Do you think of that? Are your problems in the West, all of these problems that you're so triggered about because someone said something on social media and you want to cancel them, I mean, it's so childish, and you want to do all this, is that more prevalent than 30,000 people dying each day with no food? Or what about the billion-dollar human trafficking industry? What about the point that there are more slaves in history now than any time ever before? Should not these three things be at the forefront of our mind? I'm not sure. Maybe our pronouns are more important than people being fed. And so the social media companies, anyone who believes in all of these divisive ideologies that are pushed should feel great shame because there are real life problems like starvation and human trafficking, etc., that are happening and no one cares about. No one cares about because whatever the social media companies determine is the moral flavor of the time is what we should fight for. And so we can do all sorts of things. We can try and push sexuality on children, for example. But this is insane. Leave the kids alone. With this type of insanity, people can do anything, right? They push all sorts of sick ideology onto our children. And the education system, the society and culture are trying to tell the parents what is best for their children. Leave the kids alone, you creeps. Allow the parents to raise their children as they see fit. It has always worked and it always will. So please leave the children alone. That is another part of the social justice movement that has become very creepy. And so to counter all of that crazy social justice warrior thinking, that partiality, we come to the fourth practice, which is simply to rekindle your relationship with nature and spirituality rather than being in shopping malls and being obsessed with consumeristic thinking. Such a simple practice, but it's something that we need to think about, right? Where a lot of people are so obsessed about shopping malls and shopping in general, and they are addicted to this consumeristic thinking that they cannot see their own blind ignorance to what's happening around them because they're so obsessed with their consumerism that they forget they're a part of nature. They forget the deeper elements of their life. They don't even know that they have a mind, which is crazy, right? If you ask the average shopper, for example, do you have a mind? They don't even understand what the question means because their whole perception is externalized. So simply rekindle that relationship with nature. And it's ironic because once you rekindle your relationship with nature, you'll see how spirituality seamlessly goes together with nature because spirituality arises from nature. It came from the organic nature of human beings. Shopping, consumerism, is externally driven. Now we come to the fifth practice, which is just accepting yourself as you are, plainly as you are, with no additions. Just understanding that your nature is pure. You don't need to add things to it. You are perfect as you are from birth. You know who tells you you're not? Society and culture. They say you need to be like this or that to be accepted. You need to have the strength to say no and to understand that you are already perfect as you are. Now, you may say that might take courage, but it doesn't really. Once you realize that the society that you are in has not the right intention for you, then the decision is easy. Because the idea of what society thinks is right is completely wrong. You are already pure as you are. You were from birth and you are now. You were only conditioned to believe that you are something that you're not. So all you need to do is to realize who you are not to become who you truly are. Now, the sixth and last practice to solidify the five before is vairagya. Now, vairagya in Sanskrit means dispassion or non-reactiveness. Now, both mean dispassion towards the world or non-reactiveness to life. So you are confident within your own being. You don't need to engage in the world in a certain way where you're trying to influence it according to your conditioning. You are confident enough to allow the world just to be as it will. This is the practice of Wu-Wei in Taoism, the path of non-interference, of allowing the world to be as it will without interfering, with no agenda. And so that may seem fearful to an outsider because some outsiders want to influence the world according to their own way because they fear the alternative. They fear the uncertainty of life because they think that they have certainty. But you've realized that life is uncertain. So you allow the world to be as it will, and you have mutual respect for each and every person in the world because you allow it to happen, right? And this is what vairagya is. Vairagya is not being invested in whatever the world wants you to be invested in. So you have complete dispassion. Hey, you need to worry about this social justice movement, or you need to worry about this problem over here, and you're just like abhaya mudra, which means I am completely fine. I am fearless because I abide in my true nature, which is Atman, identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality. And so you are at that level. Vairagya itself is the complete opposite to what mass media and social media want you to believe. Mass media and social media want you to stand for something, right? They want you to stand for a certain cause, or they want you to stand for the idea of yourself, which actually has been developed and it's not really who you truly are, but they want you to stand for that. Whereas Vairagya is saying, just have dispassion. Remember that if you do support that, that opposes something else. And someone else supporting that opposes you, and both of you think you are right. And so when you both think you are right, you are both wrong. And that's what vairagya is, right? Vairagya is having that dispassion towards life and allowing life to be as it will. And so the more you do that, the more you redevelop the impartial mind. You never lost the impartial mind, but you rekindle it in following that process. And so to solidify vairagya and all of those six practices and everything we've spoken today about the war for your mind by the attention economy, to solidify this impartial mind, to bring you back in harmony with your true nature. I have 3 meditation practices, which I'll briefly go over, that bring you back into the core of existence. The first one to practice is vipassana. Now, vipassana is just the awareness of respiration, or the awareness of breath, being conscious of your breath, but making it a natural activity, not looking at your breath with the conscious mind and trying to control the breath, but being observant of it in its natural way without trying to interfere with it. That's hard to do and takes a while to develop. But the more you do it, the deeper you go in your meditation practice. And as a result, the deeper you go, you get into the sensorium. So in the sensorium, in the senses of your being, of your body, the feeling aspect of your body is where we access the subconscious. So if you're sitting at meditation and you feel the strain in your groin, for example, in that strain, they say place your awareness. So you take your awareness from the breath and you put it on that sensation you might be having in the groin or your ankle or your calf muscle or something, and you place it there. And when you place it there, you'll notice that sometimes the pain decreases. And what this does is it taps into the subconscious without even intentionally trying to do so. And the subconscious in Theravada Buddhism, which Vipassana is a practice of, is called samskaras. Now, samskaras is mental impressions and subliminal imprints that we have in our subconscious. And what this does is, when you tap into that, it affects the next layer up, which is vasanas, habits and tendencies that you have that are unconscious, right? That come from the subconscious, from the storehouse consciousness at the core of your being. And so then it affects the vasanas. It burns up the vasanas. And then that affects your karma. Now, your karma is your unconscious actions and actions. So obviously, if your habits and tendencies are being transformed, that'll affect your actions, right? And so that's what this process of vipassana does. It gets down to that deep level of the sensorium, which affects the subconscious without any intention of doing so, right? Which is absolutely fantastic. If you can practice this for at least half an hour to 45 minutes, and you'll have days where it won't work that well, but you'll have days where it will. And the longer and longer you practice, the more you begin to clean out the basement of the subconscious, so to speak. Now, the second meditation practice I highly recommend with helping with this war on your mind is Zen open awareness meditation, which is often practiced in Zazen. And this is completely different to awareness of respiration. Here, your awareness is completely open. And what you're doing is you are just becoming aware of the thoughts that are bubbling up in your mind, that are just arising. And the practice here is you're not trying to suppress or stop the thoughts. You're just trying to be consciously aware of the thoughts themselves, but without wandering with the thought. Now, this is the trick, right? So you're trying not to wander with the thought, but become aware of the thoughts themselves. Now, what usually happens is if you practice this and you master this for a certain period of time, you'll notice that the more conscious you are of these thoughts, the more they just evaporate like a cloud in a clear blue sky. And that's all they are, right? They're just that cloud. And so when you become conscious of that cloud, it just disappears, and all that is left is a pristine blue sky. And that's the nature of the impartial mind. And so it gets easier and easier as you practice this long term. But as I said, the trick is being conscious of the thoughts without allowing yourself to wander with the thoughts. Now, the third practice is what I call peripheral field meditation. And you find this actually in the non-dual teachings of Dzogchen, which are found in Vajrayana Buddhism. Now, the Dzogchen teachings are some of the highest teachings in all of the world, and probably the highest teachings in Buddhism itself, and one of my own personal favorite traditions. And so what we find in Dzogchen, as I said, is a peripheral field meditation. Now, this one is interesting because when you think of your periphery vision, you can sense what's out here, right? When you've got your eyes open. Now, what we need to do is transfer that inward. And so what you do is you have the peripheral field meditation or vision within yourself. So even though it's dark, you're concentrating on the outer regions of that darkness. Now, what that does is it encapsulates all the thoughts. Now, in Dzogchen, there's a big focus on the contemplative mind. It's not about anything else but the contemplative mind in its heart. Now, the contemplative mind means allowing things to arise without nama rupa, without labeling or giving name to a form, right? And so to enhance that contemplative mind of allowing thoughts and the world to arise without having an opinion on what it's doing, you need to practice peripheral field meditation, because it trains you to allow these thoughts to come into your field but not be moved by them here or there. And what you notice is the more you practice peripheral field meditation, is the more that thoughts just dissipate naturally. And actually, this kind of helps the problem of wandering with the mind, because you're focusing just on this outer region. It gives you an anchor, and you're focusing on this outer region within yourself, and it kind of sucks in all of the thoughts and feelings and everything into this vacuum of nothingness. And so I could go on and on and on about these three forms of meditation, and maybe I should do that in a future video. But I wanted to mention those three to help you with the 6 practices I mentioned before. Those 3 meditation practices will help you stay dedicated and disciplined to those 6 practices, which actually are natural. The 6 practices are natural. You don't need to actually try hard to fulfill all those. It comes very naturally. But the 3 meditation practices I just mentioned to you will help you stick to those 6 meditation practices. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Please leave a comment down below what you think about the 6 practices, what you think about the 3 meditation practices, and also what you think about the attention economy in general. And look, as I said, there are benefits to the attention economy. It connects you and I together, and we can discuss deep knowledge, but there are a lot of negative aspects of it that we don't speak about enough. So guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Shanti, shanti, shanti.